Welcome to the Feeling Lighter podcast, everyone. We're here again. I'm Katie with the wonderful Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
We are shedding old beliefs, one episode at a time.
Yes.
Because we have discovered around here that how you feel about yourself is actually the thing that really drives and changes everything in your life.
For sure.
So we're unlearning.
Every day.
I'm really excited about our guest today. I think
Same.
I love being able to just learn new things. Like that's honestly my favorite part of having the podcast is just asking questions. And just like, trying to understand things I maybe didn't understand. So, it's an excellent way to shed beliefs for sure. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So today's guest is Ilya Parker. Ilya is a Black non-binary spoonie and founder of Decolonizing Fitness. Ilya worked for 10 years as a physical therapist assistant, primarily treating patients in level 1 trauma centers and home health settings. Ilya also has 7 years of experience as an ACE-certified medical exercise specialist. Ilya is a writer and educator with their work being highlighted in Deconstructing the Fitness Industrial Complex, the second edition of Trans Bodies, Trans Selves, and Reclaiming Body Trust, A Path to Healing and Liberation. Ilya has also been featured in Ebony, Men's Health, Self Magazine, and a guest on Food Psych podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Ilya. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Lisa and Katie. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have a extensive bio, lots of different things happening. I do want to start by asking. We were curious about this before we started today. If you could help us better understand what the definition of a spoonie is.
A spoonie is someone who carries a chronic illness or disability, and just the way we kind of move through life with our experiences and what our capacity is to hold different things as we navigate our issues.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
That's helpful to understand and just know.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Let me start by asking, we talk about how like the idea of inclusive fitness is a really small corner of the fitness industry that we want to make bigger. So what does inclusive fitness mean to you?
That's a great question. Thanks for starting with that one. Well, I first want to name the importance of noting that inclusive fitness was birthed from Black, trans, queer, and radical fat organizers. So I do want to shout out Justice Roe Williams, Amira Laddick, and Kate Harold Brown, one of the founders of Body Positive Fitness Alliance. Those are the folks that I learned from back in the day, I'll say around 2014. But for me, inclusive fitness means a way to carve space for those who have historically been negated in mainstream fitness and movement spaces. By engaging in inclusive fitness practices, we are literally aiming to be proactive and explicit in creating spaces that are anti-diet, compassionate, harm reductionist, fat-affirming, accessible, anti-racist, ethical. And also I want to name that inclusive fitness for me is not intended to be viewed as like a separate movement, but more so like a call to action for us to do
All
our
fitness
part in
spaces.
ensuring that like all fitness and movement spaces are more supportive to diverse bodies. And it's like a direct pushback towards mainstream fitness culture.
I love that.
I think that's an important distinction for sure.
Absolutely. As opposed to like creating this little separate corner like, okay, y'all go work out over there. It's really about, no, we all need to be making sure our individual spaces and clinics and gyms are accessible for people. Can you, that's a important aspect of like my practice and my business, Ilya, and I want to know, can you highlight just a few of the things that you look for or that go into spaces when we're really thinking about them being inclusive of people, for people in different body types, sizes, shapes, abilities, genders, all of that? Can you just highlight a couple of the things that stick out or that are important to you specifically or that you're working for, I know, in your space as well?
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Lisa. The most important thing for me is to value lived experience over expertise always. And really, this is something I learned working in the hospital. And as therapists, we come in because we have to learn so much in school. Oftentimes, we're telling the doctors and the nurses things about the patients we treat, but reminding myself in clinical settings and in fitness that everyone is an expert in their body. They've had this body since birth. And no matter how many books I read, how many certificates I have, degrees, I never know more than someone else. And I can always learn. And really kind of removing that hierarchy of like the coach and the client or the clinician and the patient. Like we can have this dual relationship where we learn and we support each other collectively.
I always take an opportunity when we talk about this because I think it's so important to give people permission. If you are in a medical setting and you are sharing an experience and you are dismissed, it's okay to find a different medical professional because I do feel like people are dismissed a lot for their experience. And we have this narrative in our culture that, well, they know better than I. So I just deeply appreciate you giving people permission that no, they are the experts of their body, and the medical professional's job is to support your own expertise of your own body. And if you're not having that experience, for me, I'm like, oh, I don't want to offend anybody.
Offend away. No.
Yeah.
But oh, I don't want, and it's like, no, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just a reminder to everyone that is absolutely okay to find someone who can support your experience, because there are people out there, and I think this narrative is starting to change. It's not fully the narrative, but there are people who can support your experience. So I definitely appreciate that perspective.
Thank you. And another one for me is really creating community over competition. There are ways that you can, have competitive pieces in your fitness space. But I think when you really think of competition in the context of like modern Western sports that's rooted in like warfare and nationalism and winning at all costs, I think it's very harmful, especially for those of us who have had very just really rough ways to go in fitness, and then we come into a movement space and we're immediately thrust into these positions in group settings where we have to be competitive. So I think it's important to prioritize enjoyment and team connection over winning. So thinking of like just creative ways to be less focused on like performance goals and maybe incorporate more fun aspects, or like making the atmosphere a little bit more light and playful. I've had the opportunity finally locally to engage in movement spaces in person, because most of my connections have honestly been online. Unfortunately, I just live in an area that just really ain't here for the type of stuff I'm doing in fitness. And
You're out
so
in the
to
boonies somewhere, aren't you?
What'd you say?
You're out in the boonies somewhere, aren't you?
In
I
the
forget.
boonies,
In the
yeah. I mean,
boonies.
you familiar with Thomasville?
I've heard of Thomasville. Never been, but okay.
Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
about 30 minutes from Greensboro.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and we are definitely in the boonies. Yeah, so that non-competitiveness, yet still having, just a friendly competition is just a great way to engage in activities.
I mean,
Love
I
that.
think that's really interesting that you say that too, because when we were first developing WeShape, I've had to do this weird alignment with myself around what I hope this to be versus like what people that are quote unquote business experts are telling me it should be.
Yeah.
And that's a weird battle. But I've always just like really tried to say, okay, if you didn't have to quote unquote meet success metrics in the business world, what would this look like? A lot of people are like, well, what are your competitions doing? I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I don't want to spend my time answering that question. Like, that's like a waste of my energy. And so I appreciate you, again, just giving permission that it doesn't, like, even from the business perspective, it doesn't have to be about that. And when we were discovering, like, oh, what do we want to do? Because, we were like, oh, do we want to have, a lot of companies have gamification. I was like, I don't want that because I don't want people competing with each other. Like, that's not why we're here.
Right.
So if we want to track something or it's like, let's track how we feel about ourselves, or let's track like what we're focusing on this month about maybe sleep, or, but just trying to remove the traditional normal quote unquote unquote normal narrative
Yeah.
around, who's at the leaderboard and how many did you do this week. It's like, I don't really know what that does for us.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feeds that competitive spirit that some people have, and I don't think there's anything wrong, like you were saying, Ilya, with having competition in certain aspects. But when we're talking about the fitness industry, like you said, that has been so toxic towards so many people in our communities, it's just not fun, and I really do believe in centering joy. And I want to just add, too, I think we're talking about fitness spaces and medical settings, making sure your space has seating that accommodates people in different body sizes, that accommodates people who are using assistive devices to move around, and not in like I said, a separatist way, like, oh, there's a chair over there for you, you know what I mean? But like in an inclusive and healthy fashion. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work, of which you are one, to make sure that things are more inclusive and that we're thinking about other people and listening and having that communication and those conversations. And on that note, I wanted to know, how is your gym coming along? I know I've been sort of watching the progression with that. How is it? Where are you at with it? I know you've done some filming in there, so I know, it's at least partially together. What are you working on now?
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you for that question. It is coming along quite nicely. It's a few pieces of equipment. Speaking of accessibility, I do want to get some weight benches that have a little bit higher weight capacity. And I'm
Yes.
kind of working on spacing because it's a single car garage setup, so it's fairly small. And the last piece is working on logistics because it is a gym space that's attached to my home. And again, out in the boonies. And I'm also in a cul-de-sac, so really trying to gauge. I have few people here at a time who don't quite feel comfortable being filmed, but also trying to gauge my neighbors' responses
Yeah.
to just having people come in and out. So yeah, if anyone has tips that's listening about how to kind of get the logistics going in a home gym space, I am all ears.
You know what? I actually might have a contact for you, so we'll connect afterwards. I might have a contact to help with the logistics and setup.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
What else do you want to talk about, Lisa? I know we have
so
our...
many things. I did want to get into, and I don't want to say that people don't get it, but I do think that it's possible to sort of live in your privilege of whatever your body is and what you've always been able to do and what you've always had access to, and just not be very knowledgeable about your privileges and how other people are being marginalized, especially in the fitness and the medical spaces. And so I feel like sometimes it's great to offer a platform for education around some of these toxic messages. And so I would love your insight on some of the toxic and non-inclusive messages that we hear and that sometimes we say and participate in like a traditional fitness setting, if for no other reason than to enlighten someone to recognize, like, oh, that is rather ableist, or that is very homophobic or fatphobic. These things, these systems we have in place, these things that we say, the writings on the wall sometimes, in these spaces. So would you be open to kind of sharing some of those messages and practices that, people should be more aware of?
Yes, I absolutely can. And I do want to first say that I'm actually working on a research paper entitled "The Power of Fitness," and in it I talk about how fitness has never been neutral. Current dominant fitness practices have like a centuries old link to settler colonialism, Eurocentrism, white supremacy, and fitness is actually used as a regulatory tool to monitor someone's health and ability in society. So the more adjacent a person is to thinness and being deemed as non-disabled, the more they are assumed to be of quote unquote good health and
Yeah.
therefore successful in being a responsible, productive citizen. So really honing in that fitness has socio-political power. All bodies are political, and if you're doing any type of work with bodies, you should be well aware of that because it literally shapes our overall cultural understanding of what fitness and health is, and certainly highlights how power, privilege, and oppression is perpetuated in fitness culture. And so it's important to take time to set that foundation, because a lot of what appears as what we've deemed toxic fitness culture is literally just this embedded nature of thinking this is just the way things are regarding
Yeah.
fitness and health. One thing
I hope people rewind that and listen to that again.
Yes.
yeah,
That's
that's
one that
pretty heavy.
needs to be like really sinking in.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy. That's why I cannot wait. I actually have two people who are volunteering their time, two amazing research assistants who are just pouring through tons of articles. And so I cannot wait to share this paper. But I wanted to just note that.
Yeah.
And so when you get into examples of toxic fitness culture, I mean, it runs the gamut. Things that I've been noticing as of lately is we have, especially with the boom of podcasts, we have like fitness gurus.
Right.
And I don't want to shout nobody out, but I kind of do, because I think he's been talked about a lot. Huberman.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
we know
and
him.
and so we hang on to these folks who have accolades, and this is not taken away from their scientific background and their sometimes medical experience and just the experience they have working in fitness industries and supporting people. But we also don't really pay attention to the way they're in bed with a lot of supplement companies, the way they fuel disordered eating through their
Yes.
platforms under the guise of education,
Science.
the way that brands support. You're right. Thank you. Big air quotes. the
Sorry.
way the way brands support and maintain this very, very disordered relationship with food, with movement, and that is like the core of our industry.
Yeah.
And so I did want to interject this, and I'll share a couple more examples about toxic fitness culture. The work of decolonizing fitness is not to like do an overhaul of the fitness industry. It's literally to divest. And that's why I talk about the importance of naming the power of fitness, because the industry in and of itself is inevitably going to be harmful. That's not to be, speaking on like this very negative connotation as if we're not doing good work to help change it in our pockets of the fitness industry. But it is just something that just innately, just by design of what it is just meant to be harmful. And so the importance of divesting and really thinking of ways and reimagining what movement can feel like for all bodies and people who actually choose movement, not feel compelled to move. And to piggyback off of the fitness gurus, I think there's also this very paternalistic relationship that we have with our coaches and trainers, and similar to what I named earlier about these hierarchical type of relationships. But particularly when we're talking about working with cis non-disabled white men, it's almost like, even when you dig into how much of exercise science research is performed on cis men.
Yeah.
And so when you have that foundation of the fitness industry, everything kind of moves through this funnel of what is deemed as standard and normative. And so again, the onus is taken away, or the autonomy is taken away from us as individuals with our own unique experience with moving and trauma through moving. And we pour all of our money, our time, our energy into these quote unquote coaches. And oftentimes they're steering us wrong. So that's something that I really wanted to highlight. And then two, exercise certification programs, curriculums, only mentioning fat folks as a population to kind of help manage weight.
To
That's
fix.
something, yeah, I mean, virtually all of the main personal training certifications. I mean, think about the curriculums, and I'm sure we've went through them. They're rough, they're brutal. And
Yep.
again, they highlight one type of population. And even if other populations are mentioned, again, they're mentioned in this deviant way, or this way where we need to correct their behaviors.
Yep.
And speaking of that, just feeling like folks need to overhaul or change their so-called bad habits, quote unquote, to around nutrition and fitness to be able to even engage in fitness. Like,
Right.
it's so many, when I did work with clients, there's so many folks that came to me and was like, oh, I need to do this and do that.
Yep.
And even down to like the clothes you wear, they felt like they needed to have all of these things before they could engage in movement. And I'm like, we just engaging in movement. I don't care what you wear. You can wear your
Exactly.
PJs if you want. It's up to you.
I
Yeah.
sure do.
So
Like 3 days a week, I'm in pajamas doing my workouts right next to my bed.
exactly. Same here. Same here, Dr.
Yes.
Lisa. It's a lot of times like it feels great now that I can even just work out in my socks. I have never done
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. You said so much, so many good sound bites. So thank you for sharing that. I just, I don't know. I just think that the fitness space has always been, but I mean, but I guess you said it. It was in many ways created from that negative standpoint, like to harm in many ways. But when you talked about all of our standards for research being this one like genotype, like
Mm.
this one example, all the time, that makes me think about when we have conversations about the BMI and how it's so trash and it shouldn't have even been in place and it only considered, white men in this particular time frame. And literally we run our healthcare system, our fitness systems on these things. And
Yes.
it's just insane that there's not a bigger push for evolution and changing that. And 100% the fitness certifications. I have a certification through NASM, and the entire program was about getting people to be healthy, and people in large or fat or soft bodies were the problem to be fixed. And this is how you help them stay motivated. This is how you help them, focus on their problem areas. And it's just such bullshit. It's like it has nothing to do with real health. It's not centering joy. It's not considering the whole of a person. And
Mm.
it's not equitable in any way. So I appreciate you bringing light to all of that for
I
sure.
Thank
I have
you.
an important question. This is I'm going to deem this actually my favorite episode we've recorded this
Ooh.
Oh
round.
And this
wow.
is Ilya. You're number 12 of 13, so she
Yeah.
means
Wow.
that.
Thank you. Thank you,
This
Katie.
is like I've been trying not to cry because I just feel like this is the core.
Mm.
And this is like the important stuff that I really want to get to
Right.
because I think people don't, I don't know. I just feel it's like totally not understood. And I don't understand it. I'm in a body that is like the space has been made for me. And I do really care about people acknowledging that that's not okay.
Right.
And, Ilya, my co-founder and I had a body transformation company before, and I saw the harm that did. And so this journey has been a huge like moving into this space and having WeShape has been like a huge opportunity for learning and growth for me. But I do have like this other experience that is tied to all of these cis white men that we speak of, and I have felt a lot of defeat in. I actually, this is making me think about this Pearl Jam lyric for some reason where they say, vulnerable wisdom can't adhere. It's like, no matter how much truth I spoke or how vulnerable I was about that truth, it didn't matter because that narrative threatened their identity. And I understand what it feels like to have your identity threatened. I threw my old life away. Like, I get it. But I'm always curious when we're having these conversations about what does it mean to, like, how do we, because I don't know. Do you have anything to say about, like, how we create allyship when we talk about this and then that traditional cis white man is, like, absolutely not available and this is why and this is my science? Like, it's just, how do we, because that's what we do need to create this huge dramatic change. Like, do we just say, okay, like, part of me is like, okay, you don't want to hear it. Okay, I'm moving on and spending my energy somewhere else. Like,
Yeah.
I would love a little bit of guidance and understanding of your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie, and thank you for your vulnerability and going back to the foundation of this platform with unlearning. That is a very important step. The recognition of your positionality first. And we all move through our positionality no matter what our identities are. Our positionality changes at any given moment. So it's important to be aware of that at any time. But the first thing I will piggyback on is what you already lifted up. If they're not trying to hear it, don't waste your time.
Okay.
Deuces. Right.
That's what I was thinking.
Deuces. That's very protect you, your safety, your mental health, and your emotional well-being. Like, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Pour into those pockets that you have like so beautifully cultivated, and continue to share and move from a place of service and compassion. And I love that you lifted up earlier about how you're kind of reshifting the business model, because that's exactly what my work does. Even the ways that I get paid, like I'm surprised that I'm even still sustaining this business, but pouring into it from a compassion place and always reaching to my audience about what they need, and then just sharing those jewels, and whoever gonna take it, they gonna take it. And that's what I've learned. I will say, if there is places just like this beautiful podcast where you can offer more free guides, or any type of offerings where it's like a place to bring in people who normally would have a barrier due to financial access, is so good. And then always leaving room for feedback from your audience, whether you're doing stuff in person or online. Just making it a place where people feel safe to genuinely share what's coming up for them, and then learning from that. And that's one thing that and I'm not trying to be rude, but Dr. Lisa already know how raw I get. So we Black folks often have a time with kind of protecting white people's comfortability. And so pushing, allowing Dr. Lisa to kind of push you out of your comfort zone, and even if she say stuff to you raw, take it. Not in a like sadomasochist way, because that's another thing that people think. Oh, I can just, I'm a person of color, I'm a Black person, I could just beat down on white people deserve to be beat down like we would be. I ain't saying that.
No.
But I am saying, like, move past hurt feelings, move past feelings of guilt, and really hone into, okay, this is the work we're doing because we're in service to community. And even in our little corner of the world, we are literally helping to aid people in getting closer to liberation. Everything helps.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps. So never think, this is the last thing I'm saying, never think that what you're doing is not helpful. Even when you're asking tough questions, even when you like, look, I know I'm taking up a lot of space right now. Everything is helpful if you're coming from a place of compassion, in my opinion.
I love that.
That's
I hope
really
that
important.
answered your question.
It did.
Yeah.
I've told Lisa this story a couple times. It's just, we just have to keep going.
Yeah.
Because it's not my job to convince people that this is important, and it's okay if people are confused about why we're using a fitness platform and this podcast to talk about things like white supremacy. Like, it's okay if they're confused by that. I had a PR agent once. I told Lisa this a couple times. Like, she was like, "So what were you hoping to talk about?" I was like, "We could start with the fitness industry embedded in white supremacy," and she said, "Uh-oh, I don't do damage control PR," and I said, "Uh-oh, I might not be your client." And so it's just, I appreciate you saying it's okay if, people are just going to have their opinion, and we will just keep moving forward in compassion, knowing that this is the way forward, and who is available for it will join us, and who is not will not, and that we're just going to be accepting of that. So I think that was incredible advice. And then always push me, Lisa.
I will always push you.
Seriously.
I'm a gentle pusher, but I'll push you. But no, I think yeah, that all makes sense. And it's really, I think the thing that I want to highlight about what Ilya said is like, what we're doing is making a difference. And of course, we don't see it on a global level, right? Yet. but the work that we're doing, that we're putting out into the world, the conversations we're having, the guests we're having on the podcast, the coaching calls when we're talking to clients about, moving from a place of joy or going to a place of joy with movement where it was once punishment and beating the body and, all of these things. This stuff matters. And so, I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm glad that this is something that we get to do together. So yeah, I thank you for highlighting that, Ilya. I have a question to lighten the mood a little bit. I want to know what brings you joy as a Black trans person. What is like joyful to you? What makes you smile? You do heavy work, okay? And I know I don't do half the work that you do, but I know how overwhelming it can be. And if you live your life in that heavy space, I could see it being very difficult to access joy. So I want to know what intentional things you're doing that bring you joy.
You know what? One simple thing has been, I had read an article about like some basic mindfulness tips, and one was like, be intentional with your first meal of the day, like pouring love into it. And so I know I'm late to the party, but I just start making myself avocado toast.
Okay.
And
Look at you.
I put some little because I'm trying to get my probiotics up. But I put some little beet and some kind of like roasted beet sauerkraut, which it's good. I think you
In
can
the
get that at Sprouts.
world.
And so I just like I spend so much time like doing my little egg whites, fluffing them up, making the avocado toasting the sourdough bread just right. So when I tell you, it'd be food for my soul in so many different ways.
I love
So
that.
that's one thing that's been bringing me a lot of joy lately. And
Good for
then
you.
the second thing is my wife and I, we have Sunday fun days, is what we call them. And we pick a different nature trail depending on what the weather's like. But we pick a different nature trail to hit each Sunday. And that's just like our little sacred time. And we get out and we walk. And sometimes we'll go to brunch. Sometimes we'll meet other friends. So that has been bringing me a lot of joy lately.
That is good. I love that. I'm so glad that you're intentional about doing that because, like I said, this work is not, for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of effort and energy and emotional investment, and I know how invested you are in what you're doing and what you're trying to put out into the world. So I'm glad that you're taking care of yourself with some
Thank
joy.
you.
Well, again, Ilya, I really can't express my gratitude for this conversation. This is incredibly I love the conversation and I love the work that you do, and I commend your bravery and courage, and just grateful that you were a guest on this podcast. So before we let you go, though, we have to ask the big question around here, which is, what is a belief that you once had that you no longer have that has impacted your life in a meaningful way?
The biggest belief. So when I was starting Decolonizing Fitness, I was on the verge of getting fired. I experienced a lot of racism in physical therapy, and so I was just like, oh my God, like my degree kind of validates me. Like, what am I gonna do? And this was before I had my fitness cert, and I was just like, I know what I want to do in fitness, but I'm just like, I don't have anything to kind of like show my worth. So something that I really had to unlearn, especially as a Black person, our certificates, our degrees do not override our lived experience, period. And so that's something I'm thankful that I kind of still chose to continue with Decolonizing Fitness, even though people just did not take me serious based on my aesthetic, based on the fact that I didn't have any fitness experience at the time, and I was just like, this is something I want to do. I believe in it. So
I'm glad you did. I'm so
thank
glad you
you.
did. Can you please tell our listeners how they can find you, connect with you, and also support your work? And I know you talk about this a lot on your page, but I want to make sure our podcast audience is aware, of the information and the free education that you offer to the world through your platforms. And so how they can like financially support you and support, the things that you're doing and that we're all benefiting from.
Thank you. So for those listening who have the financial means, you can definitely support me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/decolonizing fitness. I do have free memberships, and my memberships start at $2 a month. So that's the number one way you can support my work. My colleague Sid from Out Wellness, Texas, we are actually putting out a free guide for people who are curious how to even get started in inclusive fitness from either a fitness enthusiast perspective or from a fit pro perspective. So we are dropping that guide in June. And so if you go on my website, www.decolonizingfitness.com, and sign up for the free newsletters, I will be updating folks on when that guide will drop.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ilya, for joining us. What a wonderful conversation. And please go support Ilya and Decolonizing Fitness. And thank you, Lisa. And we will see everyone next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.